All right, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is bills. If you have questions on the bills, please state the page number and the bill number. Does anybody have any questions on the bills? If there are no questions on the bills, I'm looking for a motion to pay the bills.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is Mrs. Hodina.
Hi. I'm here to get approval for a couple of things that I'm doing for the German club and for my German students. The first one is this fall. We have our Ludwigsburg exchange coming back, students from Ludwigsburg, Germany. This will be the third time that they're coming, and they will be here from about the 27th of September to the 11th of October. And I'm looking for the board to approve for me to have the exchange students from Germany come to our school. We generally have about 12 or so that are here for 2 weeks. And I'll be sending these flyers out to families because families have to host these students. And so I'm looking for approval for that. It's, I don't know, it's just amazing being able to have them here. And then the other thing I'm looking to get approval for is when we travel to Germany, which will be June 10th to the 26th of 2026. And I feel like the school board members should have copies of both of these, so if they have any questions, they can look over them. The trip that we're taking this time then reciprocates the exchange student that we do with the students from Germany when they're here in the fall, and then the students that go to Germany then will be staying with those families and spending time in the school in Ludwigsburg, and that is in the southern part of Germany next to Stuttgart. And then from there we'll be doing a trip to Germany, and this year we're doing something different. We generally do Austria and Switzerland, like a few hours in Liechtenstein because it's the size of Penn County. Anyways, we're doing a northern trip this year. So, yay, we're going to be visiting all of the northern part of Germany and then spending time in Berlin, which is the capital of Germany. And so we're pretty excited about it. And I'm just looking for school board approval to move forward with those two things, both the exchange of the students coming here and then us going to Germany. So that's all I got. And if you guys have questions for me, I will be free to answer any questions because in theory, I feel like for a school our size, it's a pretty neat thing that we've got. I mean, we also work with Mora, so it's not just Hinckley, it's Hinckley and Mora. We work together, our two schools. And I invite the ITV students that I teach from Princeton and Ogilvy and Rush and Graham and East Central. And maybe another school in there I'm not thinking of right now because it's late. So I mean, like, it's neat. So, but that's it. That's all I got.
Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Hodina? If there's no questions, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the German trip and the foreign exchange students coming here.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I do have a question. How much is the cost for each student?
Yeah. The cost this year actually is about the same as last year. We're looking at about between $3,500, depending on the amount of students. We haven't 100% locked into like the airfare cost and everything yet because it's not until 2026. But yeah, I can say it's between $3,500 and I don't think it'll be over $4,000. And that includes pretty much everything. Like the airfare, the bus, the public transportation that we have to take. Part of it is busing and part of it is train travel as well. Museums.
Will the students be fundraising then for that trip?
Yes. Yeah, we do fundraising. The German club will be able to help out too a little bit with some of the students as well. I have been fundraising for the German club forever. But that seems to be like that's all I do is fundraise. But I have kind of stepped back a little bit from fundraising because this is it's a lot of work, fundraising. But like, I mean, yeah, I right now, most of the fundraising I encourage the students to do is just working at basketball games, and we'll be really hitting hard with that once the students know if it's something that they're doing. So once I get approval from the board, then I can move forward with that, and then we start entertaining fundraising ideas, right?
How many do you usually go?
Last year with Mora and Hinckley, all total, we had about 38 students with all of our schools together combined that went.
Okay.
And then for every 8 students, we need a chaperone. And the trip pays for my expense and it pays for the expense of the German teacher from Mora. And then based on a number of kids, every chaperone for 8 is also covered. So if we need the chaperones, then it's not a huge expense for them as well. And that's just part of it. Because it's not a vacation. It's just a lot of work taking kids overseas, so, right. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
So there's a motion and a second. Does anybody have any other questions? Not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is Mr. Masterson's report.
Thank you. You can see upcoming meetings both for myself and for upcoming school board committee meetings here in the month of February. Admin is not only planning for the remainder of this school year, but starting to look at summer school programming as well as beginning to talk about what our staffing and program will look like going into next school year. There's some end of the year dates that I want to start talking about and just updating you as they're going to come quick. The student scholarship, students are beginning to work on those, seniors. I believe they're due at the end of February, maybe beginning of March. And then the scholarship committee typically meets in March or very early April. Jody is our board rep on that, and we'll work with myself and Katie Hartle on that team. Coming up, it seems like a long ways away, but maybe we'll get here quick. The senior banquet then, when those scholarships are unveiled, is Wednesday, May 14th here in Finlayson. I believe it's 6 o'clock start time, and all board members are invited. Typically, I think this might be the first in my 14 years, we've had a board member who's had a senior graduating, and typically that board member would help hand out diplomas. I don't believe any of you have a graduating senior this year, so I wasn't certain how to go about that. If we wanted to talk about who, or if anyone's interested, or how we pick what board members will help give out diplomas. We've had 1 or 2 kind of changes throughout the year, so I didn't know before we get to the last topic if we wanted to have any discussion on how that would be chosen.
I think before your time, it just went out in an email, and whoever responded, they can draw names if there's more than one that's interested. I don't know how to do it other than that.
Okay. I can do that.
Jill can draw a name.
Okay. Okay, I will put that out and see who's interested, and then we'll go from there. And then the last part in my report is the board had asked me to pull some costs for our co-op transportation. So I have that link in there. I did not put it as an action item tonight as I wanted to make sure all questions were you guys able to ask me in case I don't have the information. I think it would be good for the board to make action on this at some point this spring so we can talk to our families, but I wanted to present the data and then see what kind of questions there may be. So it was kind of hard to figure out, because I don't know what transportation would look like if we did every single co-op sport. So the way we factored this financially is by sport. So we factored wrestling, boys hockey, girls hockey, and gymnastics all separately. The top half of the document factors in the miles to each school and the cost to drive a Type 3 vehicle. So you can see kind of what the breakdown of costs would be from there. But to use a Type 3 vehicle, and then I factored it at a low end versus a high end. But if we just drove girls hockey in a Type 3, that cost is roughly $10,367. For wrestling, if we just drove a Type 3, that cost by itself would be $6,507. Boys hockey in a Type 3 vehicle would be $5,716. And then gymnastics in a Type 3 vehicle, the high end would be $69,079. The way we factor that is not only by the miles round trip and kind of what we charge for Type 3, but then factoring in roughly how many practices and games each sport or activity would have. And then very similarly, we did the same if we had to take a bus, depending how many students we had. Again, traveling to Moose Lake, Pine City, or Rush City. The high end for girls hockey, if we use a bus, would be $33,516. The high end for wrestling, if we were to use a bus, is $18,790. Boys hockey is $16,505. And gymnastics would be $21,504. I believe wrestling and gymnastics typically start right after the school hour in that 3 to 3 o'clock time frame. What I've been told with both boys and girls hockey is that time frame does adjust based on ice time. And specifically for boys, sometimes it could be in the morning, sometimes it could be right after school, sometimes it could be in the evening hour. So that's part of why I also factored it individually, is not knowing for certain what time practices would always happen. I thought it would just be a good starting point to address that by each individual sport. I know wrestling presented tonight. My own personal opinion is if we would start with one, I would think we would want to look at it all for our co-op sports, but that's my opinion, just to be fair across all of our co-op sports. So that's why I had factored for each of the 4 co-op sports we had. Questions?
How many right now are in?
As of today, what Mandy told me is this is 7th through 12th grade numbers, so not the youth, but this is what we currently have, 7th through 12th grade. We have 1 wrestler, 2 boys hockey players, 1 gymnastic, and 1 girls hockey. So based on those numbers, you would be looking at a van, but I understand, especially in wrestling, there's quite a few in the youth, so that could change.
Do we have 5 vans? Or would we you could put 2 together going to Pine City, but if they're not at the same time?
It would depend what time. I mean, I would think if they're depending what time they start, if they all start at 3:30, that would be hard, especially to get to Rush City for gymnastics. I guess we'd have to look at that depending on.
Because our Type 3s are out on routes.
We have 1 that's open right now. It's used for driver's ed or if something else comes up, but we do have 1 that's typically open at this point. But that could change as quickly as tomorrow.
Again, with the surveys, but is there a way to survey the community to see if there would be more interest in these sports if there was transportation? I mean, or why they're not continuing. If there's 40 kids, why aren't they continuing? I don't know.
I could certainly do that.
Would we what we used to, for boys hockey, there was a volunteer parent that drove the driver's ed van back when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Have we looked into insurance or what?
I haven't factored in insurance. What, if that would have any additional cost? I mean, I would assume it'd be similar to what our other sports would be.
Because we won't be paying a driver. This is driver van, driver bus, correct?
Correct. I believe before I started, which was almost 15 years ago, our transportation director also used to drive boys hockey over to Mora, but what I've been told is parents paid for that at that time or covered the cost to do that, but I could gather more specifics.
Cost in as like the
I
gas?
think the driver's hours.
Oh, okay.
So if there are 40 kids in the program, is there a possibility of starting our own high school if we have somebody to coach it? Like getting it back up and running in the high school, like?
When did wrestling leave?
Oh, probably 10 years ago.
2000, I want to say 2013.
I was here, so it's got. Yeah, it was in my time as well, so in the last 14 years.
I mean, how do you get a sport back up and running?
It's a good question, I'd have to check with Matt. I don't know if it's a 2-year, like if you apply to go back. I think there's some timeline in there, I don't know that well enough off the top of my head.
And how many athletes do you need to get it back up and running?
It's also a good question. I could certainly research
I mean, if
that.
there really are 40 kids, that sounds like a lot of kids.
Yeah.
That's throughout the youth program, right? So
Yes.
Second.
Yeah.
So,
Right, but if you have those first year 6 right now,
yeah, that's
they'd
basically,
be 7th grade.
yeah, 4 years old to 12 years old are those numbers. And every year, it's like I said, it's gone up. And that'd be really great if we could start a wrestling program in Hinckley again. But it's a lot of work and it's a lot of effort. And we got a really good relationship with Pine City, so that's why we're gonna stick down that road as long as we possibly can.
And even still, like, there's one in that group so far, and next year there's 2 6th graders, but it takes a while to build to the point of having enough. And so with the ones that are going next year, like, that would put them at 3, and then the next year it keeps building, and the 4th grade group is very large. Like, that's where you're gonna have the bulk coming, is the
Current 4th grade group.
the 4th grade group has
Okay.
the largest number, and then from there down, they're all big groups too. But 6th and 5th grade is not as large, and so 4th.
And through coaching, a lot of them by that time, after 4th grade, they're like, well, we don't have the transportation, so we gotta start getting into play basketball or another sport, because they're like, where are we gonna go? I mean, we had Justin Matson, luckily his dad could transfer him and bring him down, but like when I came out 4 years ago and started the program at Hinckley, I think I had like 25 kids, and it just, each year it's just more and more, and finally I got Dan and a couple other coaches to help up here, so.
I
It's
can
growing
attest
fast.
to
Are
that. My boys also wrestle,
Are
and we've
these
been in the
co-
program now for 4 years, and it is just growing and growing. And we love the relationship with Pine City. There's a lot of talent and camaraderie and sharing of coaches and knowledge, and I think that's important for that program to continue to be successful.
Are these costs for a driver to sit there through practice and then come back?
Yeah, we did
Can I
factor
get them
that.
down there, a cost for just getting them down there?
I could get a cost for just putting them down there. We left the driver there, as I think it'd be more expensive if we sent them there, brought them back, sent them down again and came back. I could factor, if the board would like me to, just getting them there. If you'd like to see those numbers as well, I would
Would the
guess.
parents like to see those numbers if we got them to Pine City?
Anything,
We'll take anything
anything would be
that'll
great.
I would guess it's roughly in half.
Yep.
but, I can certainly run that one way. We have a student bus that goes to about the border. We have a bus that goes earlier in the day, goes to Vision to pick up Hinckley-Finlayson students and comes back, but the bus is back by, 3 o'clock at the elementary school. So we do send a bus to Pine City, but it leaves Hinckley probably around that 2:15 timeframe and is back by 3 o'clock, because it's one of the routes then to bring kids home.
Are there any more questions?
Is there anything else you'd like me to factor? As I guess my intent would be to bring it back, whether it's March or April, for a school board decision, just A, for communication, and then B, if it is something we're gonna look at, so I have time to build that into our budget. But is there anything else the board would like me to research in the month or so ahead?
If we have a type 3 that's going to Pine City, can it go to Rush City for gymnastics?
I would think it could, depending on start time. I'm not 100% certain what time, gymnastics would start. It would have to go to Pine City, drop off, and then go to Rush City. I would assume we could do that, but I would want to make sure we hit the start of practice.
I know when I was AD and we had, kids attending late, we just had conversations with coaches and
This
they
is
were
what time
very
they'll
open.
get
As
there.
long as we can get them down there, that's, that much better, so
Yeah.
they're pretty flexible.
Okay.
All right.
Good. I will have that for you and talk about it again next month. Otherwise, that's what I had in my report for you all this month.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Masterson? All right, then we are going to move on to high school principal, Mr. Lattimore.
Thank you. Good evening, school board members. My report for today, I do have an action item on it. Our ISD conference, which takes place, I believe, this year in Washington, D.C. from June 28th to July 2nd. We had a teacher at the high school that was selected to attend. What we need from you is just the board approval for out-of-state travel. It's covered by the selection, and then the teacher is required to provide their own way to get there. So just for you guys, it's an out-of-state board approval that needs to be done for that. We have Katie Harlow and myself, we've been working on the numbers for next year. So I do have the start of what we're looking at for next year in terms of numbers for classes and class sizes. So as Mr. Masterson said, we'll be looking at the budget pieces here in the coming weeks to figure out what we will have for sections for each grade or each class. So that's one thing that we are starting to look at right now, is getting those numbers down. So those are our preliminary numbers on that link that is set in there. Give an update on just kind of the behavior referrals that are going on, some of the ones that we've been looking at, and the trends from October until the end of last month. Those are all in there. Technology is different than last year because this year technology is placed on cell phones as well. So if a cell phone is out when it's not supposed to be, so those numbers can get a little bit bigger than probably what you've seen in the past, just because there's cell phone violations on those. And then we have both of our school board student members here today, Nyla and Lainey, if they want to go ahead and talk.
So, we don't really know what to talk about, but school sports, I think we're doing okay from the last I heard. Robotics, anything to talk about robotics?
Building a robot.
How much did you stand at the month?
Doing great.
We heard, for instance, a few students went to the science fair and they did well. Like Eris Ritchie, Karen Taggart, they did great. What else was there? Oh, we had Snow Week recently. That was quite fun. Other than the dodgeball tournament, I had some questions. But
It's always about the officiating.
that let's just say the Baywatch team was pretty great. Otherwise, it was all great and fun. But on a personal note, for me, earlier we were talking about our honor song being sung at graduation, and as you all know, I am a graduate, so is she. I am Native American, and it is really hard for some of us to go to school on a daily basis, especially at 8 o'clock in the morning. Some of us are not morning people, but I am also a president at NASA, and I go to NASA meetings every week. I sometimes go to drum group when I don't work. And we are doing amazing. We are singing proudly and being so richly connected to our culture, and it would just mean a lot to us children, especially as Native American children, if our honor song was brought into graduation. I would love for us to sing again. It brings us more connected as not even like just a group where it's support and it's love. We're not forcing anybody to listen to it. We're not trying to be pressing anything. We're just showing our culture and our support to other kids, because graduation is a really big deal for especially most of us who suffer from many things outside of school. Like, I'm not trying to get too personal, but a few years ago, I didn't even think I would be here. I didn't think I would be standing on this ground talking to you guys as adults and graduating from high school. My family has not that great of a history, but we're trying. And it hurt my heart last year that we couldn't sing, that we had to do a powwow outside of our school grounds, which we're happy to do that again if we have to. But we just want to be included, live up to our school motto maybe. I just love my culture, and I love the fact that I went to Hinckley-Finlayson as a child. I love this school, I love the sports, I love watching robots get built, and I don't know, maybe not winning, but having fun. And I love learning, and I'm gonna continue going to college to be a teacher, to save my voice and not be so quiet anymore, because it's important to me that we are heard. And I would be beyond tears if we were just able to sing our song. I know we have so many supporters, whether they're quiet or loud or shy or who cares. I love my school, and I love being included, but I would also love to hear my song, our song sung at graduation, because it's a big support for us Native kids, because we don't have a high population in our schools. Not just Hinckley, but East Central. There's only, 8 Native American kids this year? Only 8. And those 8 kids are trying so hard to stay on the right path, and it's really hard. So, my experience, our drum is our grandfather, and it speaks truth, it speaks love, it speaks harmony and peace and guidance. It brings us to good ways. It's like medicine, but it's not harmful. It's beautiful. And I would love for all of you guys to witness that. Powwows are beautiful. Our culture is beautiful, and it's rich. And us younger generations are just going to keep standing and fighting if we have to. But it's very rich, and I would love for you guys to include it. Thank you guys for letting me be on this board and saying my things when I need to, or when just standing there when I don't have anything to say. You guys laugh. But thank you for hearing my voice today.
Thank you. Thank you, Nyla and Lainey.
Thank you. Any questions for me?
Mr. Lattimore is looking for approval for his out-of-state conference.
I'll move that.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is elementary principal's report. Mrs. Scully.
Well, good evening. It is February, so it's I Love to Read month. If anybody's looking for anything to fill their day with, we are always looking for volunteer readers, guest readers in our classrooms, so reach out and we'll get you signed up. It's always a fun month to celebrate throughout the schools. We have fun activities planned all throughout the month. lots of activities in the hallways at Hinckley Elementary for the kids to look at as they go to lunch, and really a fun month trying to get through winter time. We had book bingo again at Hinckley Elementary. Very generous donation from the Hinckley Lions to make that happen, as well as Jill Hopkins organizing all that. It was our 10th annual, if we can believe that, but the attendance was down a little bit this year. I don't know if it was just having it at the end of January, illnesses, everybody's super busy, but we still had a pretty good turnout, and the kids had a great time, and everybody went home with a book. You can see our curriculum updates there. We are in our 3rd year of Amplify, going well. Now's the time of the year that we'll start diving in a little bit more to Amplify to see where those holes are, to match up with our Minnesota standards. School readiness or early childhood programs are also using Amplify as well as Bridges, so that vertical alignment is there, and we're really seeing how that impacts our youngest learners. Math, we are in our 1st full year of implementation with Bridges. 6th grade is still using CPM, and that's going phenomenally. We're really encouraged by what we're seeing in our data, in our growth data this 1st year. The conversations, the rich conversations that they're having around math when you walk into the classrooms is crazy to hear how a 1st or 2nd grader can really explain their thinking about math, and sometimes it even makes our staff go, wow, I never thought of it that way. So it's really, really cool to see. I would say an area we need to work on is our socially emotional learning. What we're finding is it's super hard to find a dedicated time for that. So that is something we'll be looking at the master schedule on and making sure that is built in for next year. Finlayson does a much better job of getting the social and emotional learning in, but there's 5 standards that really are a high focus in our social and emotional learning, so we need to do a better job of that. The growth data as well as proficiency data is there in front of you. Really cool growth. We don't have as many kids meeting proficiency at grade levels we'd want, but that continues to be a goal that we work towards every year. So if you have any questions on that. The discipline data we took from month to month, a comparison from last year to this year, and then we also broke it down by grade level. I think when I was putting this together, I was like, wow, we had 51 in maybe 5th grade last year, where we have 10 this year. Like, what happened? So we started digging into that a little bit, and we look at maybe kids that they're no longer here, or we have different programming set up for them, or we have some supports built around them. And that's why that discipline data is so important, because we're able to identify trends and maybe times of day or the day itself. You know, where can we build those extra supports in for those kids? So some of those are working as well. Right around the corner, we'll be shipping kids off to Wolf Ridge. Super happy to report there's only 4 kids staying back this year. 3 from Hinckley Elementary, 1 from Finlayson. None of those are financial strains. It's just either parent or child not preferred to go. So we have now dissolved our agreement with Healthy Kids for the before and after school care. We work pretty tirelessly to try and get kids signed up for the program. We had 2 signed up for Hinckley. We went from a full-time sign up to on-call, they call it, or drop-in, and they never had one show up. So it was just time for them to say we've put forth a good effort, and now we're shipping all their stuff back to them. They bought a lot of stuff and really put everything that they had into this program. So we're shipping it up at their expense and heading it back to New York. And then I do also have an action item. We had a teacher also approved for the ETSI conference that's in San Antonio, Texas. We do not incur a cost, but other than $694, which comes out of our PD budget. There's a little bit about the ETSI conference there. one of our special educators would be going down to kind of see how that technology can help her in her programming for her special ed students. So we're looking for that action item to approve that. I think that one of the really cool things is when they get approved to go to that ETSI conference, is they come back and they present at Epic. So they're sharing not only that knowledge with us, but with 3 other districts as well. So that is all I have.
Is that the same conference she went to last year?
Nope, that was a special educator specifically. Well, this one, ETSI's more technology driven.
Oh,
It's in San Antonio too, not Washington DC. I must have looked at the wrong one.
okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Sculler?
Bonnie, do you know why the families didn't take advantage of the Healthy Kids? That was a no-brainer, right?
No clue.
Okay.
Yep, the families that we had some interest right away, and then when we ran into some inspection barriers and we had to push back the start date,
Okay.
I think that was a barrier. But once it got up and running, I know one family was working with the county to make sure it was all paid for, and I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean,
Okay.
they had the before and after school option and just
Nothing. Okay, thank
nothing.
you.
Yeah.
Leo, so on that, a couple families I talked to didn't do it because it's only before and after school. It's not on days where there isn't school, and it's not in the summer. So that's a huge barrier right there. So they're gonna need childcare, so they need to stay in the daycare in order to keep their spot. So if we could find some way to have year-round after school.
They do have a summer option that they would run, and they said that.
And did parents know that?
Well, we didn't sign up for it because we didn't have any parents. We couldn't offer it
Gotcha.
to someone that wasn't
Oh, you're right.
there. Yeah. But they said they were open to planning that summer programming if needed. Yeah, I don't know. It was baffling to me as well.
Okay, thank you.
I did ask them, is this kind of a one-time deal? And they said, no, if the need presents itself later and the conversations have to start up again, they'd be happy to continue to partner with us. So.
Okay, good.
I just have one question on the behaviors. Is that really
Yeah.
81 last year in kindergarten
Yes.
and down to 14 this year in first grade?
I'm guessing some of that, I would have to dig in exactly, but
It just seems low.
like we also said, we have some that get a lot of referrals and stuff if they've withdrawn or they're no longer part of our district.
Gotcha.
That makes a
Okay,
huge
yep.
difference. I think keeping 4 sections, keeping small class sizes has really helped. But yeah, I'd say move outs was probably the biggest impact of that one, as well as programming.
So this is not per student, I mean, this is total referrals, so it could be
Per grade, yeah, one
4 kids
one kid
doing
of-
all 81 of
Correct,
those.
yep, and we could dig into that a little bit more, but I know some move outs
No.
have had an impact on that.
Thank you.
If there's no other questions, then Bonnie's looking for a motion to approve out-of-state travel.
I do. So
sorry.
with some of the reading
Mhm.
and the math scores, there's been a lot of remedial work that's being done. And, still even in that K through to 4th grade, those numbers are definitely lower with the app proficiency. So, COVID definitely played a factor, but what would that be? The 5th grade students, those were those kindergartners during COVID, right? Yes.
1920.
And so that one's lower, but even still, the K through 4, I guess I kind of was thinking those would be some higher scores. Any ideas?
No, and we talk about that at our data meetings too. It's a one-time shot of like, is it a bad testing day? Is this what you're truly seeing in class? Does it reflect I just had a conversation with a teacher today about like, is it an accurate depiction of our students in class? Some yes, some no. Some are more capable of what they're showing. I would say our kids get pretty test fatigued too. Like they don't really see the value per se, so they're not really putting forth their best effort. Yeah, we'd love to see our proficiency higher. And it's just something we have to keep problem solving and provide maybe some tier 2 supports where we see those holes. And that's what I'm talking, like, we need to identify the gaps with Amplify too, to what piece is missing. I think we'll see our math continue to grow. Yeah, I wish we had that answer. We'll continue to problem solve though.
The dynamic shifts at 4th grade too, right? Prior to,
Yeah.
K-3, you're learning to read.
Yep.
Then on, you're learning or reading to learn. So there's that dynamic shift that takes place there after 3rd grade.
So Mrs. Schollard is looking for approval for out-of-state travel for Hinckley-Finlayson.
I'll move that.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is Empower Learning Center. Ms. Kunze.
I don't have the flu this year. So those of you who aren't familiar, Empower Learning Center across the street from the high school. Most people know we have our day students during the day and we run a high school day to high school. But beyond that, we also do the district's credit recovery. So any students that are catching up credits that they missed run through us. We also do the summer school and adult basic ed, where adults 17 and up can come back to either earn their GED or their high school diploma. So we're a little more than just the school day. Some new programming this year. I'm happy to announce that we have reestablished our partnership with the Finlayson Lions, which historically we've had in the many years we've been a program. The last couple of years, just with the staff turnover that I've had in the building, it's been out of my capacity to really keep that going. So we fundraise with Finlayson Lions to support our student leadership group, but for us it's really important to not just fundraise for the sake of, hey, we need some money. We like our students to learn to give back also. So this partnership goes both ways. So we come to Finlayson and we help with pizza and bingo nights, St. Urho's Day, 4th of July events. So we are learning community service and volunteer work at the same time. We were just here for pizza and bingo December. Yeah. We're gonna help with Santa Days. They didn't need us, so we came to help with pizza and bingo. We had a little bit of free time and well, I got to beat all the old guys at cribbage and make a lot of guys in the room mad. So she won the cribbage tournament, which was pretty exciting. Another thing that's new this year is we started what we call the What's Going On news game. So this is a once a week, weekly quiz. It's run like a game show and it's all around national and international news, pop culture, movies and media, Minnesota specific events that are happening. So getting our students engaged with current events and what's going on and kind of gamifying it a bit. And so since we've done that, students have got the hang of the types of questions that I ask. So they're coming back more prepared with the answers. So we're seeing them digging into media and looking into headlines and what's going on and coming back with those answers where we didn't have a lot of engagement with current events before that. So it's been kind of a way to bring that into our program. It's been a lot of fun. So those are the two new things. Continued programming, it's in the report. I don't want to bore you with what you can read. Brain Work Wednesdays, we're continuing, which is just a push at the end of every month to make up some credits we might have been lacking. I was reading through here and I think when I was shifting these paragraphs around and copying and cutting and moving, I accidentally deleted a part because one thing that I think is really cool, and I wish I would have brought one for you to see, is every 2 weeks with our students we check in with them at where their credits are, what classes they're taking, how many credits have they earned. So they get a progress report, the parents get a progress report, any stakeholders, truancy officers, or anybody that needs to know gets that as well. But the piece that goes with it that's really cool that I developed last year is they get a 3-piece snapshot where they can see 2 weeks before the credits that they earned and what pace that was giving them. They can see this 2-week snapshot, what have you done these 2 weeks? And then what can the next 2 weeks look like for you going forward if you keep up this pace? So they have a 2-week benchmark they have to meet. They'll see their goal change if they haven't met it or if they're running ahead. And it gives them a projected graduation date based on the pace that they're going. So every 2 weeks, every student knows exactly where they are on track for graduation. So there's never a question, am I doing enough? Am I gonna make it? They will always know. So we've seen a lot of success since we've implemented that. And I'll put it back in there so you have it on your Google Doc. We continue with the food shelf, we continue with early middle college, community service. The big one I really want to hit is MAP stars. So I don't know if you read my report last year, but MAP stands for Minnesota Association of Alternative Programs. That's a collective association of alternative programs in the entire state. So there's the teacher side that has the executive board and the conferences that we go to professional development, but then there's also the student side, and it's called MAP Stars. It's a student leadership group where kids who really, just by nature of being alternative ed kids and learning in a different way, really haven't had a lot of opportunities to step up into a leadership position. And so this gives them that opportunity. And they have officers that get elected every year. They have to run, they have to present in front of over 100 of their peers from all over the state that they've never met before. They have a platform and an agenda that they present and give a speech. Last year we had one of our students elected as a state officer. And so she got to go around to the legislature and other schools and be an ambassador for alternative ed schools and speak to senators and representatives about alternative ed and the impact that we make on students who might not necessarily make it to graduation otherwise. This year, we didn't have anybody run, but because nobody was elected from our region, we got a personal phone call that said Bella really made an impression at our spring events conference last year, which had over 200 students. She got up in front of the group and sang and presented. So they personally called up and say, can Bella be a rep for your region? And so I brought Bella along. She came with us last week to the teacher convention and spoke to over 100 teachers also about MAP Stars. And this is a girl that said, I'll never speak in public, I'm so shy, it'll never happen. And now she's getting headhunted and talking to educators. So are you okay talking a little bit about MAP Stars?
Yeah, I am. So last year was my first year attending MAP Stars, as it was my first year at the Alternative Center. And I truly just want to say it was a life-changing experience. Like, if everybody can go and attend that, I would absolutely encourage it so much. I went in really like, I was an outgoing person, but like not in the right way. So like now, like if I'm going to have something, it's going to have a point and a meaning behind it, not just to be said and walked like over. So I went in not really knowing who I was as a person and not knowing much about life skills as well. So basically the spring event is this giant get-together with statewide alternative schools, and it's so cool to meet so many students that are like go through the same things as you, like know what it is to be in an alternative school and have like certain nicknames for each other. So it's so cool, like bonding and getting to know absolutely everybody. And they put you through challenges. So there's a makeshift job interview, so everybody like gets to experience a first-person job interview. There's team leadership, decision and management, parent decision making, sorry guys. And then there's Life Smart, so it's basically like trivia where everybody gets to buzz in a buzzer and say the right answer. It's a super fun event, and it, like I said, it was honestly life-changing. And then the fall conference that I got to attend was so fun. It was basically, it wasn't really the challenges and obstacles this time. Like when I went there, we did laser tag, there was a ropes course, there was like, it was just a fun little get together to just like get to know everybody. That's also where they elected the state officers for the alternative programs. So I just want to say that MAP Stars is honestly a mind-blowing thing, and I'm so grateful that it exists. I'm really proud to be able to represent it statewide. And yeah, I'll be going to the legislative day up to go talk to our legislators. And I'm currently working with MDE on a few things as well. So we have bullet points on what we're focusing at right now. So we're doing a lot of great things. And that's basically it.
I'll add that in there as well, I forgot. She is part of an MDE cohort. So they meet every other Thursday on Zoom with our MDE reps, the alternative ed reps, and the financial rep also actually. And they go over legislative platforms and what they want to present, so that's pretty cool. And then we continued our Thanksgiving Miigwech feast that our students plan, budget, cook, set, decorate, prepare, personally invite staff who show up at the end and grab a plate after
That's pretty good.
they don't have to avoid discussion.
Pretty cool.
And we do our Christmas tea, and that's a chance to bring parents and guardians into our program as well. And at the end of the year, we'll do a barbecue. And I just have to say, we really have to thank Achievement Integration Funds because we couldn't do it without you, so Miigwech. Enrollment, I know it's really important to you, so we will hit on enrollment. You'll notice the last 3 years since I've been back, we've slowly built our enrollment back up. The first year I was back, it was just myself and a smart mentor. We averaged 16 to 18 students enrolled at a time. Last year it was me with a brand new Tier 1 teacher. We climbed up to 18 to 20 average. We have 23 enrolled at the moment right now. One more who's gonna start as soon as I get their records back, whenever that comes in. We only have 20 on our wait list right now for this year. I say only, that's small for us. We usually are in the 40s, which at the end of every quarter, we'll take a jump. So I imagine we'll see some coming back in and 4 for next year. We've had 28 students come through this year. 2 have graduated. We have a pretty young crew right now, so you'll see some years like, wow, 50 students went through Empower. Well, that might have been a year we got a lot of seniors that had 2 credits left to go. Right now I have a lot of 10th and 11th graders, so we're gonna have this group for a little while. So our graduate numbers are gonna be probably a little lower this year, just not because they're not graduating, but because they're younger. We have had 17 graduates from last year, February, when the board got my report, until now. And students that have graduated since then, we have a student at Rochester, for college in Rochester, we have one at Pine Tech, we have one at Anoka Ramsey, we have students employed with the Mille Lacs Band as childcare attendants, local 49ers, and service and hospitality industry as well. So that's what some of our recent graduates are up to. Credit recovery and summer school numbers are in there, so you can take a look at what that looked like this year as well as adult basic ed. Any questions for me or Bella?
I got a comment. I just think what you're doing is fantastic. I thought you did before you left and then came back, and it's something really needed, and I think you do a great job, so thank you.
Appreciate that.
Are there any questions for Val? Right, then we will move on to facilities report, the DNR building.
Yeah, so last week, maybe it's almost a week and a half ago now, Dave, Leo, and I met with the individuals who work down in the DNR building, and they had some state representation as well, just to kind of go over a lot of things. So first they started with the meeting. If you remember last month, Matt Ward came to the meeting and talked about there may be $350,000 that the state would have to help the district make some upgrades to the DNR portion of the bus garage. That money is not all there to start with. They have so much they can spend the remainder of this fiscal year. That would have to be spent by June 30th. And then for some bigger things, there would be money there, but they would have to budget for it. We'd have to get some architects out. We'd have to get some more hard prices. The state would have some money to help the district offset some of those large costs. but it wouldn't be all there upfront, kind of like they implied last month. So I'll go through some of the things we talked about. The DNR would like the board to take some action on a couple things tonight as we look towards long-term plans. But we looked at the building, we talked about some needs, things like that. The DNR building probably hasn't been upgraded in a really long time. We're talking at least 20 years probably. So there's definitely some needs down there, both inside and outside the building that we need to address. The DNR sounds like they very much want to stay. They've been with us, the district, in that building since the 60s. They'd like to continue the partnership, but they would like to see some upgrades to their portion of the building. We told them that the district has not discussed moving away from that building or making any changes to the bus garage, that it's been a good partnership. The DNR is considering a few things going forward. They'd like to consider, if everything can kind of be agreed to, a one-year lease, so renew for next year, as we talk about some long-term fixes and upgrades and how to pay for that. And then if that gets approved a year from now, they would look at up to a 10-year lease with basically having 2 5-year options. And it would justify the investment that the state would be putting in to help with some of those building improvements. There are some immediate maintenance needs with worn doors, trim. There's some cracks between like the garage doors and the frames, so mice are getting in and things like that. They talked about possibly widening a garage door, which I'll get to in a little bit. And then they have on the east side of the building, it's an old barn door type garage where they come together instead of the nice industrial roll down garages. They have 2 barn doors that come together, aren't fully sealed around the edges, so snow, cold, rodents get in. So it definitely needs some upgrades, both in the immediate and long-term planning. We are a little worried about the structural integrity, so one thing we talked about is we should get a structural engineer out there just to make sure before major money is put into that building, is it a viable option? And if that all comes back as we kind of hope and that the building is okay to upgrade, the DNR is looking for some internal renovations to make it a more modern space and make ADA compliant. So there's some things that they would like to consider. One thing that like I talked about, they're looking at signing possibly a 12-month lease, which would start July 1st and carry us through the next fiscal year. But in that 12 months, they would like to see some more minor upgrades. Upgrades to one of their bathrooms, new floor, replace some faucets, fresh coat of paint, replace, we have a metal floor drain over one of the drains on the garage floor. It needs a new cover on it. We're already working on that, trying to find that so that their tires may not fall into the hole. Keith is going to work on clearing brush and trees that are on the north side of the building. He had done that this summer for our bus garage half. We're just waiting for the rocks to show up from under the snow so we can get to work on that. But there's some wood frames around the garage doors that need to be updated and treated. Keith's already beginning to work around the overhangs and the caulking that needs to happen to clean up the gaps, but a lot of that can't happen until the snow and frost go. Talked about the large garage door, which the district would pay for that part. I have an estimate when we get to the capital budget in there, it's going to be less than $5,000. And they'd also like to see where they park their vehicles. We have like elevated lofts in there. It's a big garage space, but there's like elevated lofts that they're not using, that if we removed them, they'd have easier access to get their trucks into the building for parking and things like that. The last one they would like, so where they park some other of their vehicles is right next to kind of where our bus garage is. It's currently about a 9.5 foot door, and that's where they're backing in their DNR trailers, things like that. They would like that widened, and that's something the state could pay for this fiscal year. The school district would get quotes, which Keith is working on. We would pay for it, but then the state would reimburse that cost to widen that door. It's that they have a hard time, especially during the school year when buses are down there in that parking lot, getting their trailers into that. So Keith is working on getting quotes from that. But what the DNR would like to see is the district committed to putting some of those first more minor upgrades in place, and then look to have a long-term solution to the DNR building, and want to keep the DNR in there as part of our tenants. And then they did acknowledge that, you know, to do some of these upgrades, we may likely have to change our rent. So they'd like us to have a discussion on that. The rent is currently $1,714. It's been that way for all 5 years of this lease. When I did some research to the lease before, it was about $1,630 in there, which was about a 5% increase from the last time they signed a 5-year lease to now. Just looking at that roughly 5%, that puts it around $1,800 a month, if we wanted to look at that. So a couple things, I guess, at the end of the discussion looking for is, are we willing to do some of these minor things in a year as we continue to research long-term solution? And is the district comfortable with that $1,800 or a different amount of possibly changing the rent for that 1-year lease? So that was a lot of information. Dave, Leo, I don't know if you guys have more you want to add. You guys were both there as well, but
It was in worse shape than I thought. I was kind of surprised or shocked.
I would say they've been very tolerant.
yes, they have.
Yes,
yes, they have.
I think it's gotta be fixed so that they'll keep renting it, because what else would we do with the building? No matter if someone else were to come and rent it, I think their standards would be even higher than what they'd expect out of it. So they showed a real willingness to want to stay. And they're talking about changing the ventilation in the office plan and spending some big money on it that they'll pay for. So it's going to improve our building. And it was their suggestion that they would like to pay more rent for it. That's money that I can.
So what are the costs right now? The 5,000, is that
So
what you think?
I have in the capital, which
Doesn't seem like a lot.
the initial bid, we've only been able to get one bid so far, but the initial garage door bid is at $3,500. So I don't think it would be up to 5,000. That was kind of what the DNR guesstimated. When we got one bid back so far, it's at about that $3,500. And those other upgrades, again, Keith is already beginning to work on them, but I think they would be covered with possible increased rent money. So he wouldn't have to use his other maintenance funds for that.
Is most of this stuff that can be done by our maintenance, or do we have to hire?
I believe it's going to depend what we find if we start taking some of those door frames off and things like that on the outside, because are they really rotten? Or most of the internal stuff we can do, the stuff that we would wait, that would need to be done now before a bigger upgrade. Some of the stuff we'd have wait until the whole renovation, but some of that stuff, yeah, Keith thought he and his staff could take care of, especially when he has some extra help in the summertime.
So it looks like Brian would like an approval to go ahead with the door for sure.
Yep, committing to the door, committing to doing some of these projects listed in the next 12 months, and then also going back to the DNR with a new lease payment of $1,800.
Should we shoot higher than 1,800 and we can always come down?
We certainly could.
Do we know what the going rate is for the square feet of that?
I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
I would guess that if they do these increases, improvements, I wouldn't be afraid to ask them for 2,000. I mean, that's, 2,000 on rent, doesn't go very far anymore.
Do they pay the utilities?
No,
So the district pays the utilities and,
correct. They have their own internet, you know, they sign up for internet access, they have their own agreement with SCI and things like
but
that.
the power and
Correct,
gas,
correct. That comes out of their lease. So what we pay comes out of.
or there's no
what their-
gas there?
Correct.
Just power, is it
They have
Eastport
power.
heat?
It is a lot of floor heaters right now, being honest.
So we're paying more than 2,000 in utilities.
Probably. It's a lot of space heaters. They said they have a lot of fans going in the summertime. They do have a window AC unit,
And
but
so part of their upgrades are,
HVAC type stuff, yes.
I think Rich's Repair, what used to be Rich's Repair, I've heard the figure of 2,500 they're asking for rent on that, but nobody's rented it yet, but so I think at 2,000 would be a fair figure to start with, like Dave says.
What about rent plus utilities? Let them cover what they use. Maybe they'll be a little more concerned or try and be more efficient with their utility usage.
will that be hard to figure if
I
it's
would
in the
say
same
you'd probably
building?
have to
Yeah, I'd
split
have to
it.
check
Because
with
it's part
Bridget on
of
that
the
part, yeah.
gas garage, so
Right, maybe
would they be-
just somehow, I don't know how you do that.
I can ask Bridget what that looks like, the breakdown between, if we can figure
Is it
that.
metered separate?
I'll have to ask, I'm not positive.
Could be a proportion to the square feet or something.
So Brian's looking for an action item. So someone needs to make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Do you want to state your motion?
I will make the motion to approve moving forward with the garage door and those items listed in the next 12 months
For 2,000.
for 2,000.
Does anybody have any questions?
Would that include plus utilities?
Depending on what Ryan figures out, if it's even possible. If it's not possible to figure out what they're spending and how to break that down. But I would think if we're also paying that, then I think we could look at higher.
I think with what has to be put into the building, maybe for the first year, we go with 2,000. And then after this year, because it is in bad shape. It really is. You can drive by and see how bad it is. So if after that, then we'll negotiate the utilities. Is that fine, Toby?
Sure.
That's my motion.
All right, so Heather has a motion. Is there a second? Leo seconded?
I seconded it, yeah.
Sorry. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is budget topics, unfinished bill. Communicate.
Board committees?
Board committees, does anybody wish to present on their board committee?
I think we can first.
No? Then we will move on to unfinished business budget topics.
Okay, a few things to go over. The first is we ran the first run of preliminary revenue for next school year. Want to hit a couple things that you could see in this as you look at 2024 to 25-26. The general education revenue, the way we built this, is based on currently about 827 students. We currently have 856 in the district, but what we did is took the grade the kids are in now, pre-K through 11, and moved that same number forward a grade for next year. And just anticipating a similar number coming into pre-K. So where that drop comes is we have more seniors graduating than our youngest enrollment. So that's kind of where that difference is. We're still gonna look at that for our enrollment, but we're projecting just natural, depending on whatever happens over the summer, natural a reduction in students again next year. So that's where some of the revenue, most of that revenue is why we have some drops, is basing on less student population than we have. Some things that are also changed, and I know the state is a little bit behind where they usually are at this time of year, but compensatory revenue is one area that we're really watching. If you see last year when we approved our budget, that was about 1.9 million. Currently, that's projected at a little bit higher than 1.6 million. The biggest reason, so the state, we're hoping that most platforms are kind of asking the state to keep their same compensatory revenue. A big portion of how the state gets this data is what that educational benefits form, or the free and reduced lunch applications. With the state moving to providing free lunches and breakfast for students, less families are filling out that educational benefits form. So there are many advocacy groups asking the state to keep the old compensatory revenue formula in place. The state, that is one of the topics they're looking at. That is something we'll definitely have to keep our eye on, as early projections show that that's about a $282,000 decrease. So hopefully the legislation will hear these advocacy groups to kind of work on that. Special ed funding, we've talked about a lot, has kind of come in pretty much at predicted at that about 2.4 million. Right now, all of the potential special ed revenue that is there, if you remember the last couple of years, we've talked about not putting it all in there. Feel comfortable that it's going to be about that 2.4 million, but we'll have to keep watching that as MDE is starting to talk about prorating special ed revenue and things like that in regards to transportation. So all in all, the state has not yet come out with any projected new revenue outside of what happened in the levy process. So, and the state government just got started on work last week. So, you know, roughly, you usually have had a first run of projected revenue numbers, new revenue money. Don't have that yet. So we're hoping there'll be new state money on the general formula, or just that they're putting into different projects. But as of at least Friday anyway, our revenues predicted at this point to be about $815,000 less. Again, the state has not come out with any formula or new monies yet. I hope there will be some, but as of last Friday, that's not the case yet. So we'll continue to follow that. Admin team will begin working on if this becomes our revenue, how we'll match programming and staffing and things like that throughout the district. So we're going to begin that work now, so that way we can respond if and when the state comes with their final numbers. So they did tell superintendents last Friday they are projecting the state may not be done until June. They're supposed to be legally done, I think, the Friday or Thursday before Memorial Day, but they're projecting that they're going to probably have a couple special sessions into June. So we'll see. Typically, our board has approved we have to approve a budget in June. Typically, we do at our regular June meeting, but if it's like a couple of years ago, we may have to look at a special meeting towards the end of the month of June. So lots will happen in the next 3 months, but that's kind of where we are as of at least Friday with revenue projections. You can see where our enrollment was as of February 1st, which was about the same as last month. So we have seen our enrollment, at least total numbers, stabilize. We still have movement at all levels, ends, outs, but they're balancing out at this time. And then the last big one I'd like to talk about in this area is I do have the first run of capital budget projects. It is significantly higher at this point than where we ended our capital budget last year. The biggest reason for that at this point is we do have just what the cost of replacing the gym floor in the high school would be. And you can see that line item is about $300,000. I'm waiting to see where our fund balance from our audit comes in, as we're anticipating it coming in a little better than we hoped, and maybe that could help with some capital projects. If it doesn't come in as well as we're hoping, we're going to have to obviously do some trimming. The other thing Keith has on here in a couple places, at least in the building and facilities, he has the price for leasing the lawnmower, which if you recall, we've done the last 2 years, or if we purchase the mower that we have been leasing. So wondering if he sees it, leasing has gone fine. They come out, they put maintenance on it if need be. We don't have to store it in the wintertime. At the same point, we're leasing and never gonna own. So he and I are still talking through that. I don't know if the board has any input on that. What you would like to see, if we should outright buy a lawnmower and have our own again, or continue with leasing. I like the price tag of leasing, but I understand it's nice to own our own lawnmower.
Who maintained it when it?
Greg Ferguson. We maintained it. Unless we couldn't, then we would have to bring it into our shop. But otherwise, we tried to maintain it the best we could. You can see on there that I have that garage door at the DNR at about $3,500 that we talked about. Otherwise, it's pretty specific stuff that Keith talked about last month. Technology capital purchases are pretty similar to what we've had in years past. The biggest change, at least from what we've seen in the past, is the paging system here at Finlayson Elementary School needs to be replaced. We can only communicate via the phones, so if they're in the hallways, things like that, the big paging system doesn't work. So we need to fix that, because they're not always in their classrooms right by their phones if we ever had to do an off or school all call. So that's on there. And then the transportation part, we're still waiting on a quote for a gas bus. Otherwise, the rest of those things on there are pretty typical things that Bruce or previous transportation coordinators have had. So any initial questions on anything in the capital budget, we'll probably look for final approval. I'm guessing it'll be April this year, not March. But any initial feedback that you have on the things in the capital budget?
On the lawnmower, have we asked for other quotes, like from John Deere or anybody?
I don't think we have yet.
Okay. Did we originally rent or lease one from John Deere the first time, or was it always
It
been
was
Stan?
Stan's both times.
Okay.
And where stands?
Pine City, I believe.
The gym floor is 300,000. That's not less the LTFM that we have set aside.
That's just the cost,
How
yeah.
much do we have in LTFM?
Currently, we have about 120,000 built for the LTFM fund balance.
We got any update as far as our timber sales, or no? Okay.
Keith does, for the gym floor, have someone from Resource Training Solution gonna just do a quick sample to see if there's any asbestos in there. They have a test they can run to see if the costs would be more, because part of the fear is we still don't truly know what's underneath that gym floor. So we're gonna try, is there water, is there worse, is there what's under that floor once you take it up? So Scott George from Resource Training Solution tomorrow is gonna take a sample and see if he can run some tests on that, so we can get a better idea. But this $300,000 would, I believe in the quote, has asbestos removal in there. So this would be the high end of a quote.
And then my other question is, do we need to buy a bus every year?
We don't. We have 4 that are in reason. We have 3 right now that are being used just for parts. Part buses, and I believe we have 4 others that did pass DOT inspection. We do have an aging fleet, but they are still passing DOT. So just that fine, how much long, we don't have to. Bruce would like to, just because our fleet is aging, but it is passing DOT.
Would we have a bus that we could trade in towards the cost of a new bus?
Yeah, we're looking at that, if not trade in with there, or also trade somewhere for parts or other kind of financial gain for us. So we are researching that too, because I don't also want to keep storing a whole bunch of buses in the bus parking lot either.
Yeah.
If nothing else, because it's on our insurance if we're never going to use those.
Okay.
Have we always bought a bus every year?
Every
I
other
mean,
year.
during COVID, we skipped a year because there were no buses, but.
It was every other year.
Every other year, I think, is what
Every
we've tried
other
to
year
do.
we do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This year, like, we bought a Type 3. I think the last 2 years, we bought Type 3.
Yeah, didn't we have extra money come from somewhere?
But we
so
bought a bus
another one?
last year. So why? if
2
we-
years ago, I believe.
It's a type 3.
Yeah, and it was extra money, so we got those 2 Pacificas, I think.
Otherwise, I don't know if we want to go on to policy reapproval, or if there are any questions on anything in the budget topics or unfinished business.
The routing software, is that an annual?
It's annual because of the GPS stuff. It's upgrading the technology. It's an annual cost, yeah.
Are there any more questions regarding either the capital budget or revenue? If not, we are going to move on to policy. Both of them are reapprovals.
Looking for approval to pass the student fundraising and student memorial policies.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the policies or want to vote on them separate?
I was hoping we could change, instead of having a name, it would
Oh,
be.
yeah. In the memorial.
No, on the student fundraising, instead of having
Yeah,
a
instead
person.
of, yeah, or we'll just call it, instead of the fax teacher or Mrs. Krieger, we'll call it our fundraising coordinator. Change that right now.
Okay, so with that change, I'm looking for a motion to accept the two policies. Policy 538, student fundraising, and policy 539, student memorial.
I'll make the motion.
A second.
There's a motion and a second. Does anybody have any discussion?
You're gonna change that throughout this policy?
Yeah, yep,
Okay,
yep.
because her name is in there.
Yeah.
More than once. Yep, I will change it in the whole thing.
Okay.
Section 5.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is J Pride.
So I added the science fair winners, so if you haven't got a chance to see that, looks like our students did very well up in snowy Duluth this weekend.
Can we add the band director and choir for performing at basketball games? I think they've been doing a fantastic job this year, both groups.
Good.
All right, next up is meet and confer.
Met with Mr. Richter last week, talked about some things, especially at the junior high level, happening with 7th and 8th grade, and some of the planning and things that has been put in place, and ideas that are being worked at. Talked about communication between the high school staff and administration. Also talked about whenever you're dealing with increased student behaviors, things like that, that always does not help staff morale. So we talked about some strategies or ideas to work through that, find more ways to recognize our staff who are doing a great job in light of behavior issues, or we talked about also with budget forecasting not being as good as possible. That always brings down morale as well. So we talked about ways to recognize staff at all levels who are doing great work, even though some of these issues are happening kind of around us and causing some of the morale things. Talked again about communication as we go forward with budgeting and staffing and programming. And then we also briefly discussed hiring practices and open communication between applicants, between the district. You know, a lot of times Eric and I will need to discuss employments when we're putting them on salary schedules and things like that. So just continuing to find that communication between both sides, so there's not surprises and things that come up as we go forward. I know the board also met with, or representation of the board met with a group of high school teachers a couple times in the last few weeks, and I feel like we're making steps. It's never as fast as everyone wants it to go, but I feel like steps are being talked about, and I feel like we've had good, open, respectful conversation, and I know when I meet with Eric or other union representation, it is very respectful and problem-solving in nature, so I appreciate that, at least from my lens, working together with the union on things that come up throughout the year.
Mr. Richter, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, it's, you know, we've had a couple of meetings with some board members, and I appreciate the time and the passion. You know, I hope that you see that we're also, you know, working on things and trying to come up with stuff to, you know, improve, you know, various aspects of our student experience and our professional experience. So definitely had some great conversations, and I know some more people would have liked to have been there, if not for, you know, limits on the state there. So I appreciate that, and that's always, you know, it's amazing how much it helps people to just have a conversation. So that means a lot. So appreciate that.
All right, we will move on to board goals.
Just put an update on things that, just what our school board goals are for 24-25, and then some update that we've worked on since the board goals were approved. We are getting to that time of year where we'll start talking about school board goals for 25-26. I won't read all this to you because it's a lot of typing, a lot of writing, you've had this. But is there any feedback that the board has on more we could be doing to hit our goals, or what we have done to hit our board goals? Any feedback that I could take back to the admin team, take back to staff, that we could work on to continue working on those for the rest of the year, and then as we gear towards making new goals for next year? Otherwise, admin team will keep working on them, and we'll have another update next month to talk about a little bit more as we then plan our 25-26 school board goals.
All right, next up is first read of policy reviews.
I just wanted, I'll certainly answer questions on any of these. I wanted to hit the first two on the smudging one. The policy upgrade changes recommended by our district attorney are because we had the smudging policy in place before the law. However, I'm still reaching out to our attorneys to get some clarification on a few things that they changed, as I don't know necessarily why they changed it. So know that I'm reaching out to talk about why they crossed off sage, cedar, and sweetgrass, as well as a couple other places where I believe the law still says that the smudging ceremony should be led by an American Indian adult, where our attorneys changed that to an adult or an American Indian adult. So I'm looking for clarification on that still. I will have that clarification by next month. And then the second policy I specifically wanted to hit is the personal electronic communication devices. So the state came out with a new cell phone, what you would think would be a cell phone policy, but really they're calling it all electronic communication, smartwatches, you name it. They even have smart glasses, I learned. So that's what this policy would be. Joe, Bonnie, and I have not put our specifics into this yet. We are meeting tomorrow to do that. So in category 4, letter A, we have not put in our information to that yet. We will do that tomorrow. It will be in there in time for next month. This is probably a policy we're going to have to change every August as we update student handbooks, things like that, until we, unless we decide to just take away cell phone devices from all students K-12. But Joe, Bonnie, and I will update that tomorrow, and it will be up and ready with our district-specific language in there in time for next month.
All right, does anybody have any questions regarding, I'll just read them off, policy 419.1 smudging policy, policy 524.5 personal electronic communication devices, policy 606 accountability, policy 607 parent review of material, policy 701 adoption of district budget, and policy 902 community use of school facilities.
Can someone outside the board make a comment or not? I don't know if that's how it works. About the smudging policy?
Yes. I will allow
Are there
it.
best practice models statewide in other schools that could be looked at? I'm just wondering.
Want me to answer that? So I actually asked our attorneys that, and they said they have, so there's not a lot of other schools that have a policy. They found Grand Rapids had one, Duluth, St. Paul, Shakopee. Ours is the most, in our attorney's viewpoint, ours is the most flushed out policy in the state compared to others. So they are doing that research and are comparing it. Ours has much more specifics than some of these other school district policies.
Thank you.
So MSBA doesn't have one.
MSBA does not have one, no.
Are there any other questions? No? If not, we'll move on then to resolution to accept donated funds.
The donor for this first one is the Hinckley-Lions. They have donated a total of $2,700, and they had it divided into specifics. 1,000 would go towards robotics, 500 towards book bingo at Hinckley Elementary School, and $1,200 to cover open swim the months of January and February. So looking for approval to accept the donation from Hinckley-Lions.
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is another resolution to accept donated funds.
This one is from an anonymous donor, but the donor is asking or wanting to donate $1,500 to help cover the costs of the 6th grade Wolf Ridge trip. So looking for approval of accepting $1,500 from an anonymous donor for Wolf Ridge.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up are the reimbursements for the Para-Pro exam.
Excuse me. So one thing we're talking a lot about is how to attract more support staff to apply and stay with our district. And one idea that's come up this past year. So our district has always required either the people in our our support staff positions to either have a 2-year degree or pass the Para-Pro test. We've always required that locally. The state now requires that for all school districts, so it was good that we've already done that. But why the state's requiring it now is that's the only way a district can get reimbursed if a sub is subbing as a special education para. They have to now have the Para-Pro test or have a 2-year degree. Again, that's been our practice for a long time, but we're starting to hire younger staff or having a harder time hiring staff. I think we used to have a grant that would help offset this cost, but to take the Para-Pro test if they don't have a 2-year degree is a $75 cost. So it's really hard in the summer because we're one of the only few testing sites around. So we may have people coming from East Central, Pine City, Mora, all throughout the area taking tests at our site. So I'd hate to reimburse up front because we don't always know if they're going to take a job with us. But if a support staff member does take a job with us, had to take the Para-Pro test, I'm asking the school board to reimburse that $75 fee after the support staff member would complete their probationary period. By that time, the principals have seen their work, and it might be a way to help incentivize some more people to apply for these positions in our district. So looking for approval to accept the recommendation to reimburse the $75 Para-Pro exam fee for any support staff hire going forward. We wouldn't retro it, we'd start tomorrow.
I'll make that motion as you described.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Next up is the 25-26 school calendar.
So I was all ready to ask you to vote on this tonight, but then the superintendents from Pine City and Willow River and East Central all were texting, and it sounds like the entire county is hoping to put spring break the second to last week of March, which what I was gonna propose tonight is a calendar with the spring break the last week of March, which butts up to the Easter holiday. I know some of the feedback from staff, community, board is to try to align our spring break to our neighboring districts. And it sounds to me, based on text messages I got today, is all 4 school districts. We're gonna consider having their spring break next year the 3rd week of March, which is the week before Easter. So I don't have a draft of a calendar with all those dates worked out. I would need to do some finagling, but looking for input. We certainly don't have to do what the rest of the county does. I think it's, from my perspective, it's good because we share so much programming, especially with East Central and Pine City. And then if Willow also had the same calendar, that may be good for just that consistency throughout the county. But so I'm not looking for school board approval tonight. I will come with that request for next month, but looking for feedback on spring break specifically or anything else that you saw in the calendar that I have linked into the agenda.
So the school days that would be covered would be March 16th through the 20th on the proposed change?
What I'm 23rd through 27th is when spring break would be proposed. Currently, in the link in the board agenda, I have it the 30th through April 3rd. It would change to the 23rd through 27th.
So then the following week is Easter, Good Friday?
Yep, I would propose in the next draft Good Friday, the 3rd being off.
Okay.
I would think there'd be a lot of families that may not choose to go on a vacation the week of Easter, but maybe they'd like to take their students on a vacation. So I think it would be beneficial if the spring break would be prior to Easter, so that they can do their vacation and then attend church the week after.
We've heard that feedback from staff, but then we also heard it's also tough to go on spring break and come back and have another short week. You know, just a lot of breaks isn't good either, but that has been feedback we have heard from staff as well, is not to put it up to a holiday. However, it was also just this last week, it's also not good to go on a, have 5 days off and come back and go on a break again. So just trying to find that balance. And whenever you talk about spring break, you're never gonna please everybody. So you're not gonna find a week that pleases everybody. So.
But with programming for us, so our Pine County Transition Program, we have people, we have students from East Central and Pine City. Our New Directions program, we take in Willow River, East Central, Pine City. So having that alignment would be nice just for programming for us as well, to kind of align all of those that way. Because I know for just our transitions program, the month of March is shot because Pine has it 1 week and then East Central has it, then we have it. So to have that kind of that consistency, if we're all going to do a spring break, that would help. Now it's just helping 28 whatever students it is right now, but I mean, to have that consistency for all of our people, that would be huge.
So I plan to in March come with another proposal, which we're approving it in March is fine. We've had years we've approved it in April or May, so I think approving it in March is just fine.
All right, and last on the agenda is the statement on superintendent's mid-year evaluation. The board conducted Mr. Masterson's mid-year evaluation during closed session at our January board meeting. To summarize, we discussed his goals and will perform his annual evaluation again in July, August. And we are now at the end of our agenda, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.